Hey folks, welcome back. I'm David. We're here in my shop where I build E-War guitars. This is going to be episode number 22 of the tutorial series on how to build an electric guitar. And if you've watched any of these other ones, you all know that this is the one we're building right here. And we are almost done with this thing. I mean, we are all but finished with this thing. Anyway, this is going to be part number 2 of the final assembly. And in this video, we're going to handle installing the pickups, getting our controls all in, along with our 3-way switch. I'm going to show you how to wire everything up. We're going to get the bridge installed, we're going to get the tailpiece installed, and we're going to install the tuners up there too. Anyway, I hope you stick around and check out the video. And if you dig it, how about you give me a like and subscribe? Anyway, why don't we get rolling with the video? Okay, so now that I have my pickups 100% done, I'm going to go ahead and do some of the wiring on these controls before I drop them in the guitar, just to make it easier. So this is what I do here. I've got this little thin piece of MDF that I went ahead and drilled out my layout for my potentiometers. And you can see I've got them all labeled here. I've got neck volume, neck tone, bridge volume, bridge tone. And I marked it on the other side too, because I got a tiny little brain and it gets kind of confusing flipping it back and forth. So anyway, so I labeled it all out first, made sure I had it right, and I went ahead and stuck my Switchcraft jack up here too, switch rather, up here, so I'm just going to solder the leads on that. This little board helps hold all this stuff together. But anyway, so I've got 4 500K CTS potentiometers. I've got my 2 orange drop capacitors. These are 0.22K. I've got these guys going to go in there. This is some of that pushback wire. It's pre-tinned and it's 28 gauge. I got a roll of black and a roll of white. I've got my solder, which is this guy right. It's pretty thin. I can't remember how thick it is here. It's 6040, 0.822 millimeter diameter solder. But it's great stuff. This thin stuff's the stuff you want to use on this tiny little wire and everything. But anyway, I'm going to get going here and start soldering this stuff up. So one of the toughest things about soldering this stuff is finding a way to hold that wire with the little end of the wire touching what you want it to be touching, because it needs to stay there pretty stable while you're soldering. So I come up with all kinds of goofy ways to hold the wire on there, and then the soldering's a breeze. Once that wire's held in place, the soldering's a breeze. That's a great little soldering station I have there. I've got the soldering iron set on 750 degrees. So once you hit it, it hits pretty quickly. And you can solder up pretty quickly, which is nice. The lower temperature ones, you hold it on there for too long and it begins to scorch everything. With that, you can hit it, heat it up, solder it, and move on. So I like to do as much of this on the outside of the guitar as possible. And that's why I drill it so they're all laying in place so the wires are basically the right length. I leave them a little bit long, but it just helps. The more you can do outside of that cavity, the better, because when it gets down in the cavity, it all gets 5 times harder to do. So now it's time to, I clean out that finish that gets down in those holes. So I use the same size drill bit that I drilled the hole with, and of course I run it in reverse, because if you don't, that could grab onto that finish and tear out some wood if you run it in the regular straight direction. So I always clean those out in reverse, or I do it by hand without the drill. Well, which is what I'm doing right here. I've cleaned these holes out a few times during the course of finishing this guitar, so there was very little finish in there, but still you want to get it out so these parts fit in like they should. Trying to fish that little bridge ground out. Now I need to tuck those wires in temporarily so I can lay that guitar flat on its back and pound those bridge and tailpiece posts in without getting any wire marks on the back of the guitar. So that little bridge ground, you just bare the end of the wire, you slip it in next to that bridge pin post, and it just pinches in between that and the wood, and it holds it in there real tight. And of course, I always check at this stage while I'm doing this. I always put my little ohm meter on there, and I check and I make sure I have continuity on the ground. So I always buy these. I have a hard time finding guitar potentiometer knobs that are 1/4 inch. These are the type that has a little set screw. I find hundreds of them that are 6 millimeter. Of course, 1/4 inch is more like 6.3 millimeters. So after a while, I just determined, heck, I'm going to buy the 6 millimeter ones and I'll drill them out. So that's what I do, and it works pretty good. I put a little oil on there to not catch that in my drill bit, that knob in my drill bit. Also put tape on those jaws of that little vise I have there to try to keep those knobs from getting any kind of marks or anything on the outside. I always orient those knobs with it turned all the way down to 0. All the arrows are pointing up towards the headstock. I don't know if that's right or wrong, it's just kind of the way I've always done it. I use a little piece of tape there too, because I hate getting those tools that close to that body for fear of making a scratch or something. Okay, so I'm getting ready to put these pickups in. And this is something that I knew I've been looking at since, since I started the guitar. I've got these pickup rings, these guys right here. I've got one for the bridge and the neck. And this one, when it's centered, it hangs over this wrist relief here a little bit. Quite a bit, actually. Enough that I really hate it. So what I've decided to do is I'm going to direct mount the neck pickup into the body without a pickup ring. And it's still going to have the chrome cover on it. And I'll just direct mount. And I've done that on a lot of my guitars. And the bridge pickup I'm going to mount with the ring, okay, because that fits just fine. I kind of like the way the ring looks on them. And it kind of gives a little bit of a beefier look down here at the bridge. So anyway, so what I've got to do is I'll get into how I attach the springs to the back of the neck pickup base plate. But for now, what I've got to do is I've got to drill these guys out a little bit deeper so I have room for my springs to get down in there. And I'm also going to have to drill these guys out a little bit too for room for these screws right here. So I've been holding off till now because I wanted to see for sure when this thing was all done how this pickup ring was going to work when it's in its proper location. So I didn't drill these out, but I'm going to go ahead and drill it now. So I'm going to drill the bridge pickup for the 2 screws, just to have room to hang down a little bit so it could be adjusted without hanging up on anything. And on the neck side, I'm going to drill it out to where I can get the legs of the base plate down into that hole and have room for, so I at least have a little bit of spring below this here. So anyway, and I'll get into it in a minute how we're going to attach those springs. But anyway, so I'm going to drill that out for now. So that's a 5/8 drill bit I use. It basically fits nicely up in that little ear of the pickup route. And I'll drill all 4 spots on, both spots on both pickups with that same drill bit. And I go about the depth of the head of the bit, which is around 3/8 of an inch. Gives you plenty of room for the legs on the neck pickup and the screws on the bridge pickup. This is, if you remember, this is an angled neck, so there's more space. That bridge pickup is higher out of the body than the neck one is. And that's why on the neck pickup, those legs of the pickup base actually have to sink down past the initial pickup route a little bit. So I've got to chisel that out to fit down in that 5/8 hole, just a little bit. So I'm dropping that pickup in to make sure it fits in there without getting hung up on anything. And it fits in that hole really nice. So now I'm just going to mark a couple of holes where I've got to ultimately put in the screws. I'm going to mark them now, and then I'll go ahead and set a depth flag on my drill bit and drill them out the rest of the way for the full depth. It gets probably within 1/4 inch of the back of that guitar, so I want to be careful about how deep I drill. So now I have to drill out the legs of that thing so I can fit I think it's a 3/32 screw. So it fits in there and without being threaded onto the pickup base plate. And I'll take a standard pickup spring and I'll cut it in half because that's about the only length I need. And I'll slip it onto those screws. I'll put a little alligator clip on it, and that basically holds that spring centered over the hole on both sides and keeps a little pressure so the spring is sitting straight up on top of that pickup base plate. And then I just solder them on. And it works really well, actually. I've tried all the different ways. I've tried the little foam blocks and all kinds of stuff to float the pickups on, but for me, this is just almost a no-brainer. It just really, once I figured out how to do this, it really works well. And you get the same capabilities for adjusting the pickup up and down as if it had a pickup ring on it. So I've done it several times and it works good. Okay, so that's how those little springs go on there. I just use my soldering iron and I solder them on. I could drop the screws into here and screw them right in, and those springs stay right in place. And it's a nice, easy way to do it. It took me a lot of trial and error to figure out how to do it this way. I've tried a lot of different ways, but something I wanted to point out while I had the opportunity. So this is a base plate that you build a pickup, humbucker pickup on. And if you notice, the leg length on this one is quite a bit shorter than the leg length on this one here. Now this type of base plate is intended to be mounted in a pickup ring, which I intended to do until I got down to the end and I realized, well, I really can't do that because of the way the pickup ring hangs over the edge of the wrist carve here. So, but I wanted to show you, normally when I build direct mounted pickups where I'm screwing them right to the body of the guitar, I don't have to drill that extra hole I just drilled, and I use that short-legged base plate. And it took me a long time to figure out that they even made those things. And I'm assuming you could buy pickups, you know, Seymour Duncan or DiMarzio or whatever with the short leg on them like that if you're going to direct mount. If not, if you're going to build your own pickups, I know you could buy these. So anyway, so what I had to do too, so I've got the long-legged pickup, which meant I had to drill, you know, fairly deep down into the guitar. I think that hole is about 1 inch off of the top, or 1 inch and a little over 1 inch off of the top. And to make sure that these screws are not going to come anywhere near the back, I'm going to have to space them off of this leg here a little bit, like give a space like that. So I went out and I picked up these little spacers. That's a 3/8 long spacer. I'm going to drop that in there like so, and it gives me still plenty of spring action down here and plenty of thread to go down into the body of the guitar without getting too close to the back of the guitar, because we definitely don't want that thing sticking out of the back, and it'll mount just like that. And that's what I'm about to do. I'm going to put this together, but I just want to stop a second and kind of explain those couple of things to you. So anyway, I'm going to put a little more matte wax on these screws and we're going to put it back together. One of the hardest things is fishing those wires down and through there and getting them out. I use that pair of forceps and all kinds of different tools. Got your hands holding all these things and doing everything you can to not scratch that body. That just works nice. That pickup floats in there really well. You can adjust it up and down just like a regular, you know, ring-mounted pickup. Worked out good. So I'm going to set that bridge pickup at roughly the height I think it's going to wind up being at. And I'll drop that bridge in there just to check it and make sure that, you know, I have what looks like it's going to be good clearance in the end. So in case I have to modify that pickup pocket anymore to get that bridge lower, I'll do that. But I can see right here that it's got plenty of clearance, and if anything, that's going to adjust up from that spot, so we're going to be good. Now it's on to getting those tuners in. So first I'll put them all in and I'll snug them a little bit with the wrench to where I could still rotate them around, because I like to get them all in place and then look at the angle they sit at and make sure it's all right. And then I'll go back and tighten them a little bit more and then flip it over and put in the screws. So what I basically try to do, and of course that headstock is curved on the sides, and I try to set the shaft that the tuner knob is on basically perpendicular to the spot of the side of the headstock where it sits. So now I just flip it over and drill them out. I'm very careful to mark the depth of that drill bit, because that's a big fear of mine, running a drill bit through the face of a guitar at this stage of the game. I would hate it. Things that nightmares are made out of. And of course those are tiny little screws too, so I always put paraffin wax on them before I screw them in. It just basically helps lubricate them, and they slide in that hole much better than without. Because I've broken those guys before too when I didn't put wax on. They look cool. Now it's time to solder those pickups in, and also solder on the output jack too. This is where it gets a lot tougher, because you're working down in that cavity and you got a limited amount of space, and I use just whatever I can to hold those wires in place, like that pair of needle nose pliers. I need to invent something, a way to hold those wires on there. Maybe one of you guys can, and just show me how to do it. That's a little heat shrink tubing on the two wires coming off of the pickup. And then you solder in the hot wire and the ground off of the pickup lead, and those other two, I think those are the finishes of each pickup. The two you solder together and put the heat shrink tubing on. And then you just solder in the hot and the ground and get ready to test it. Okay, so the last thing is that output jack. Okay, so there it is. It's all wired up. I think it came out nice and neat. Got the switch up here. Got all the potentiometers and capacitors and whatnot down here. I think it looks good. Got my little output jack put in. So now is the time for the all-important tap test. To see, I drug my amp out here. We're going to turn that amp on and test a different position of the switches. So this is, I have volume, neck volume, neck tone, bridge volume, bridge tone. So right now everything's turned down. Let's turn the neck up a little bit. We got to switch to neck. The amp is on. Let me find something to tap it with here. That sounds good. You can even hear the tone. Darker, brighter. Okay. Nothing on the bridge. Let's turn that bridge up. That's down. Nothing on the bridge. So the middle we got neck, bridge. I hear something on both of them. And I hear a difference in the tone too. Now bridge should be nothing in the neck. And we're getting it from the bridge, not the neck. Change the bridge tone. All right, it works. I am glad that it does. So I guess on to getting some strings on this thing and getting the nut slotted and all that stuff. So anyway, I'm going to button this stuff up and we're going to get going with that right now. Oh, you know what I need to do? I need to put my covers back on here. Want to make sure they fit without touching anything. This guy here is awfully close. This guy right there is good. Nice. Let me flip that back over. Just make sure, because that switch was close. So that should be bridge. All right, we good. Well, folks, I think that's about it for this video. I'm just going to get these strap buttons screwed on. I'm going to call it a day. Anyway, I hope you all dug the video, and I hope somebody got a little something out of it. I really enjoyed the heck out of doing it. So anyway, this guitar is done sitting in front of me, but we've got one more video to go, and that's going to be next week, where I'm going to go through the whole setup process on this. I'm going to slot the nut, I'm going to slot the bridge down here, I'm going to get the strings on it, we're going to set it up. Anyway, I hope you all come back and check that out. And in the meantime, God bless you. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and we'll see you all in the next one.